So today we'll go for so what is React? React क्या है उसको देखते हैं. So what is React and React DOM? Create root, render method, JSX and JSX rules. What is Babel? तो इसको हम देखते हैं यहाँ पर. So what is React? So फर्स्ट स्टेप में हम देखेंगे React क्या है. So React is an open source JavaScript library. तो पहला चीज यहाँ पर क्या है कि React is a library. So React is a JavaScript library. So React is not a framework, it's a library developed by the Facebook. So Facebook ने इसको बनाया. It's primarily used for building user interfaces. Primarily इसको किस लिए बनाया गया? User interfaces को बनाने के लिए, especially for single page applications, SPA applications. So React is a library developed by the Facebook and it's open source library, and React is developed primarily for building interactive user interfaces, especially for single page applications, SPA applications. Now, at its core, React revolves around the concept of component. So React is component based. So React is component based. In React, we create the component and we nest or club those component into another component to create the interactive user interface. So React is component based. React is a library specially designed for interactive user interfaces in a SPA application, single page application. So what is basically component? So component is a reusable building block that encapsulate UI elements and their behavior or logic. The component is a basic building block of React applications. Every time when we do something in the React, 90% times we are going to create the component. So what is a component? So component is a combination of user interface, UI, plus logic, behavior. So component is a reusable building block that encapsulates the UI element and their behavior, logic. By composing these components, you can create a complex interactive user interfaces. So using the components, you can create the complex and interactive user interfaces. Now the key features of the React JS are. So why React is popular? So there are some features due to which React is popular. So the first feature due to which React is popular is virtual DOM. In previous session, we learned about DOM. So DOM is a manipulated version of a HTML using client-side script, which actually represent the current UI in a web browser. Now React has one key feature called the virtual DOM. Now React maintains a virtual representation of actual DOM, document object model, in memory. When changes occur, so React efficiently updates only the necessary part of the real DOM, resulting in faster rendering. So React do not use browser DOM. So React has its own DOM called virtual DOM. So React creates its own DOM called the virtual DOM. So React do not use the browser DOM. So when you make any changes in the React user interface or React components, so it will be reflected in a virtual DOM and only the necessary part will be updated to a real DOM or actual DOM, browser DOM, resulting in faster rendering. So React a feature. So React is very fast. The one reason behind it is virtual DOM. Now, component-based architecture. So React encourages breaking down UIs into smaller independent components, making code more modular, reusable, and easier to maintain. So component-based architecture. So React encourages breaking down UIs into smaller independent components, making code more modular, reusable, and easier to maintain. So compute component-based architecture makes it very easy to develop a user interface. In component-based architecture, you do not need any complex thing to develop the applications. What you just need a paper and pen. You draw the user interface on a paper and break down this into smaller components to create your UI. So component-based architecture makes React easy. How? Just get pen and paper, draw the parts of your UI, and create a component for every part of your UI. So create a component for logo, create a component for header. Suppose this is logo, this is header, this is navbar, this is body, this is footer. So you can create one component for footer, one component for body, one component for navbar, one component for header, one component for logo, and we plug all these components together into one main component. It forms your UI. It's very easy. You do not need any, we can say, complex mechanism to build the UI. Second thing, component makes your code more modular, easy to maintain, and reusable. Right? Now, the next thing that we have is JSX. So React support JSX. The JSX is syntax extension to JavaScript that allows you to write the HTML-like code within your JavaScript code. So JSX is a syntax extension. It's an, we can say, wrapper around the JavaScript or extension around the JavaScript. So using JSX syntax, you can write HTML-like code within your JavaScript code. So you directly write the tags in a JavaScript code. So what advantage you will get with the JSX? It make your code more intuitive, easier to read and understand. Now, one of the major reason that React is popular is React has a large and active community. So React has a massive active community, providing extensive documentation, tutorial, third-party libraries. React ecosystem is one of the largest ecosystems in app development. I think there is a tough competition between the Python and the React community. So React is having very large community, which makes many ready-made things available for you. So there are many third-party libraries, many third-party, you can see utilities, tools are available, and get the extensive documents and support and the tutorials for the React. So this is again one of the major reasons that's why React is popular. Now these are, we can say, four key features due to which React is popular. Now, next thing that we have is performance. React is fast as compared to Angular, Vue.js. As per a rendering of UI is concerned. So React renders the UI very efficient way. So the performance, the virtual DOM and efficient rendering techniques make React application fast and responsive. So this virtual DOM and So rendering techniques in React makes your React application fast and responsive. Flexibility, React is a library, not a framework. So it's not rigid. तो React जो है library है, framework नहीं है, तो rigid नहीं है, flexible है. So giving you more control over your project's architecture. तो आपको ज़्यादा control देगा project के architecture में. So flexibility रहेगी. If you don't like Y thing, you can replace it by Z. If don't like Z, you can replace it by T. So you will have many choices because it's not the framework. It's not bounded. It's free. It's just a library. So you can attach this with any framework, any technology, any tool, any third-party library, and you can use it. If you look at the Angular, so Angular is framework. So it has everything built in. So it's solid. It's rigid. So you will not find many libraries or many utilities or tools that work with the Angular. Since it's a full-fledged framework, it do not need any third-party thing. But it makes rigid. You cannot use any third-party thing directly in Angular. And since it's a full-fledged framework, nobody or few may think to develop some libraries around Angular. The React is library, so it needs some other library. So you'll find many libraries for a React to that. So giving you more control over your project's architecture. You do not need to go by framework. You can create application architecture as per your requirement. Scalability. The component-based approach makes it easy to scale applications as they grow in complexity. The component-based approach makes it easy to scale applications as they grow in complexity. Fine. So you can scale any component. So if X component has large load, so you can scale it independently other than other components. Large ecosystem, I had already told you the vast ecosystem of libraries and tools are available for React to enhance your React development experience with them. Strong community support. The large and active community ensures you will find help and resources when you need them. Cross-platform development. So React can be used to build not only web applications, but also mobile apps using React Native and even desktop app using Electron framework or Electron library. So React is initially developed for web applications, but with React Native, so you can use the React to develop the mobile applications. And even if you integrate this with the Electron to develop the desktop applications. So cross-platform development, you can develop desktop, web, mobile, all three types of applications. So if you look at this, so React is in library, one thing. React uses virtual DOM, second thing. React is having a large community, large ecosystem. React is flexible, and React is cross-platform. Now, what is React and React DOM? So React is a library and React DOM is, we can say, a rendering engine. So React and React DOM are two essential components of the React ecosystem for building user interfaces. Let's break it down. So React is library. So this is the core library. So React itself is a foundational library. It provides the building block for creating user interfaces, such as components, reusable UI elements that encapsulate logic and presentation. The component is a combination of user interface plus logic. JSX, the syntax extension for JavaScript that allows you to write HTML-like code in a JavaScript. State management. So React provides you a mechanism to manage the state and update the data within components of that. Lifecycle methods. So React manages the component lifecycle and provides you the functions. Those will be executed at specific point in the component's existence, mounting, updating, unmounting. So these are the four basic things provided by the React library. So React is a library, core library, whereas React DOM is, we can say, an engine who is responsible for rendering the React component to the browser DOM. The React DOM is the bridge between the React world and the actual web browser's document object model DOM. So what is the responsibility of the React DOM? Rendering. Taking the React components and their associated JSX and turning them into actual HTML elements in the browser. So React DOM will pick up the, we can say, React component JSX and associated HTML and convert it into HTML and load it into the browser. Efficiently updating the DOM when changes occur in React component state or proc. So if any change occurs in a React component property, the states, updating those changes into the browser DOM is again responsibility of the React DOM. So indirectly, so we can say, so React is a core library which provides you the features using which we can create the components, we can manage the state of the component, we can do application development. Whereas React DOM is an engine who will reflect whatever happening inside the React application to a browser. So it's a responsibility of the React DOM to translate the JSX or React components to the HTML and also update the UI as per the changes happens inside the component. Now let's have a look at two methods, createRoot and root.render. So modern rendering API. So createRoot is a new method that we have from React 18. So this is introduced in React 18. So React Root is a modern rendering API, or we can say function introduced in React 18. It's the recommended way to render the React components to DOM. It replaces older React DOM.render function. Before React 18, we use React DOM to render the things in the browser. From React 18, we use createRoot method to render the React component to DOM. So what is the advantage of this new, we can say, method? Conciseness, it provides more concise and streamlined API for rendering. Root object, create root returns a root object. So this method returns you the root object that manages the rendering process and provides access to the features like concurrent rendering. So create root method will create the root element or root, we can say, component where you render the React component or React application. So it will get you access to the root object. So this root is the object given by createRoot method. And this root object will have a render method. In React, a root.render is the method used to render a React component into a specific location within a document object model, so DOM, of your web page. So root.render is the method used to render the React component into specific location within the document object model DOM of your web page. So React defines how your UI look and behave. In short, अगर हम देखेंगे तो React DOM is the tool or engine that makes your React component visible on the web page by interacting with browser's DOM. createRoot is the modern and preferred way to render React component, offering a more streamlined, feature-rich approach. And render method will help you to render React component in a root element. Now let's have one demo. Now, if you look at to the previous demo, so give a minute, I'll show you here. So before React, how we update the DOM. So this is your HTML page, and this HTML page has a div tag, and here we have button, add tag. On the click of this add tag button, so I want to update this element in the DOM. So I want to add one h1 tag inside this div. So previously in JavaScript, what we used to do, first find the root element or a tag from a HTML document where you want to render the UI. So I want to render the h1 tag inside this div. So the first step is to find that particular tag using getElement by ID. Then create element using create element method of a document. Then create a text node using create text node method of the document object. Then append this text node to your h1 tag and then append this h1 tag to your root tag or app. Now, if you want to do the same thing in a React, so how we can do that? So give me a minute, I will show you. So without installation, we'll see how React can be used. So for React, we need three things, but right now we'll worry about only two things there. So one is we need a React library. So here we are adding the reference of React library from unpack. So if you go to the unpack.com, so you'll find the CDN for React library. So I'm putting the path of that CDN here. So script https unpack.com/react at 18 umd slash react.development.ds. So this is your React library. This is core library. Now, beside this, what we need a rendering engine, DOM, React DOM. So this React DOM is responsible for rendering your React component into the browser DOM. If you replace the React DOM with React Native, so same React component will be rendered in a mobile app. Because React Native is a rendering engine, it will help you to render the React component into the mobile app, native mobile app. So this React DOM will help you to render the React user interfaces in a web browser. So browser DOM. So we are adding the reference of this react-dom.development.json. Then same program is there. So we have the due tag where I want to render a small UI, and in that UI, I want to render an H1 tag. And in that H1 tag, I just want to put the text. So at the first step, we need to find the reference of the tag where we want to render the React UI. So we are finding it using getElement by ID. We are finding it using getElement by ID here. Document.getElement by ID. So we got the reference of due tag here in app. Then what we are doing? So we are doing a React DOM dot create root. So we are using a create root method to create a root element or root tag here. So we are making this as a root of a React UI. We are making this add tag as the root tag for the React UI. So React UI is rooted. And then we are calling the render method of a root. And we are just telling, so render H1 tag. So here we are not creating the element, then creating the text node, and appending the text node into that element, and then appending that element into the root tag. So we are not doing anything. So we are just finding the root where, we are finding the tag where we want to render the React user interface. So we are making it as a root element. And in that root element, we are rendering the UI, whatever the UI that you want to render. So you can say this is your React component, which will be rendered where in this root. Now, if you run this, what will happen? So you'll get so it's expected to get the error. Now, if you want to use the React without installation, first add the reference of the react.development.js, then add the reference of react.dom.development.js. You can use any CDN. I'm using unpacked CDN. So instead of directly manipulating the DOM with a plain JavaScript, तो यहाँ पर हम क्या कर रहे हैं? Remove the DOM method that had added previously and add the React DOM.createElement method to target specific DOM element and create root place पे render the component. तो JavaScript वाला चीज यहाँ पर नहीं यूज करें. JavaScript क्या है? JavaScript is step by step instruction. Imperative है, सब देना पड़ेगा. यहाँ पर क्या है? Declarative है. Will not worry about that. We are just finding the root tag. We are making it a root element, and we are telling the React render this UI. Now internally, React will create the element for it. It will create the text node. It will append that text node into that particular element, and it will render that UI inside the app. So that is the responsibility of the React. But this will get you. This will not get you expected output. So it may get you error or so same code here, or it will not get you the output here. Here we're getting the error. So यहाँ पर error आ रही है. ये तो error अलग है. Okay, syntax error नहीं आ रही, कोई problem नहीं. But we are not getting the output here. So expected output. Actually syntax error आनी चाहिए. So less than bracket के लिए. Fine. Now syntax error नहीं आ रही है because we had written this in JSX here. Let me make it JavaScript here. So we are getting the syntax error. So unexpected token less than. But this is not the JavaScript. This is React uses JSX, and JSX is an extension of a JavaScript, which will help you to write the HTML-like code in a JavaScript here. The HTML-like code in a JavaScript. But when we use the JSX also, so it's not rendering any UI. Now why so? Because So because, give me a minute, I will explain you. So because browser do not support JSX. So if you look at here, so instead of JavaScript, I am using text slash JSX. So by default, browser do not use JSX here. Fine. So what we need then? So browser do not understand JSX out of the box. So you should need a JavaScript compiler such as Babel to transfer your JSX code into regular JavaScript. So you can say Babel, whatever. So you need this compiler, and this compiler will translate the JSX code to regular JavaScript here. So out of box, your browser do not support JSX here. So what is this Babel? So Babel is a JavaScript compiler that transforms modern JavaScript code into an older, more compatible version of JavaScript that can be understood by older browsers. So Babel is a JavaScript compiler that transforms modern JavaScript code into an older, more compatible version of a JavaScript that can be understood by the older browsers. In the context of a React development, so Babel plays a vital role. So JSX transformation. So JSX, the syntax extension used in React, is not directly understood by the JavaScript engines in the browser. So Babel transforms JSX code into regular JavaScript function calls that create and manipulate the React elements. Indirectly, this is a compiler or translator, we can say, which will help you to convert the modern JavaScript features into older version of a JavaScript or browser-supported JavaScript with that. The modern JavaScript feature with the help of this compiler, so we can say, any SPA technology allow you to use modern JavaScript features. So React often leverages the modern JavaScript features like arrow functions, classes, and the modules. Now, Babel ensures that these features are correctly transpiled into compatible format for older browsers. So Babel ensures that these features are correctly transferred into compatible format of older browsers. In essence, the Babel is an indispensable tool for React development. It allows you to write React code using modern JavaScript and JSX while ensuring that your code runs smoothly in all supported browsers. So we need this compiler for two, we can say, major reasons. First, translate the JSX code into browser compatible JavaScript. Second, so with the help of this compiler, we can use the modern features of a JavaScript like classes, functions, modules, arrow functions into React. Fine. So once we add the reference of this compiler to your, we can say, project, so it will solve the problem here. So if I add this reference from the unpack, so unpack.com at the Babel standalone, babel.min.js. And if you save this and if you run this, so you'll get this h1 tag outputted here. So develop, preview, and ship. Now, if you inspect the browser and if you go to the elements, you'll find the div tag, and here you'll find the h1. You'll find this h1 get rendered in a DAO. Now this way you can use the React without installation. Now let's learn what is JSX. So JSX क्या है उसको थोड़ा सा हम देखते हैं. Then we'll create a React application by installation. So what is JSX? So JSX stands for JavaScript XML. Is a syntax extension to JavaScript that allows you to write HTML-like code within your JavaScript code. It makes writing React components more intuitive and easier to read. So with the help of JSX, you do not need to juggle between JavaScript and HTML. You can write HTML-like code directly inside the JavaScript. It makes your life more easy. So you can build React components very fast. So for example, if you look at here, so div, h1, p1, div, and return. So return is basically a JavaScript function which will return something from the function. So in this JavaScript code, we can directly write the HTML or HTML-like code. We can directly write the HTML or HTML-like code using JSX. So using JSX. So this is your JSX code. Now, there are few rules in the JSX. So the first rule in the JSX is a single root element. The JSX will have single root element here. So every JSX element must be wrapped within single parent element. Every JSX element must be wrapped within single parent element. This could be div, span, or any other valid HTML element. So JSX is rooted. So you should have a root tag, and in that root tag, you can write other tag with it. So in this example, so div is a root tag, and in a div root tag, so we are writing h1 and p. Now क्लोजिंग टैग. सो JSX में और एक रूल है जो आपको ध्यान रखना है. All HTML elements in the JSX must have closing tag. So every HTML element in the JSX must be closed. So it should have the closing. So self-closing tag like img br input must be closed within / here. So closing is compulsory in a JSX. In HTML, closing is optional. If you specify, it's okay. But in case of JSX, so closing every tag is compulsory. If you do not close the tag, it will generate syntax error. So JSX second rule is first is rooted, second is every tag should have closing. Now, whatever the HTML attribute that you use in the JSX must use camel casing. So whatever the HTML attribute that you use in the JSX should be camel case. Now, next rule that we have is class. So class in HTML becomes class name in JSX. So class in HTML becomes class name in JSX. So class attribute in HTML. So we cannot use that in a, if you use in a JSX, it will not give error, but it will give the warning. And instead of that, we need to use the class name here. Now for attribute in HTML becomes HTML4 in a JSX. So there are a few rules that we can use in a JSX. Now, JavaScript expressions, you can embed the JavaScript expressions within JSX using curly brackets. If you want to embed any JavaScript expression in a JSX, you can do that using curly brackets with them. Fine. Now, this allows you to include variables, functions, calls in a JSX syntax. So curly bracket, name of the variable, curly bracket, name of the function with this. By chance, if you do not need a root tag, or if you do not want to use or render a root tag in a JSX, then you can use the fragments. So if you need to render multiple elements without a parent element, use a React fragment. React provides you the fragment, and that fragment will act as a root tag in the React. It's just an empty HTML tag. The fragment is nothing but an empty HTML tag. So if you do not want to render a parent tag or a root tag, so instead of that, so you can use the fragments. Fragment is nothing but the empty HTML tag, which will help you to render the multiple, we can say, element in a JSX. So what are the benefits of JSX? Reliability. So JSX makes your component structure more visually clear and easier to understand. तो reliability बढ़ेगी, समझने के लिए आसान होगा, visually भी दिखने में आसान होगा. So maintainability, it improves code maintainability by separating concerns between the presentation JSX and the logic in JavaScript. तो JSX में हम UI लिखेंगे and logic जो है, behavior जो है component का, we put it into JavaScript. It will automatically separate your presentation and the logic. So maintain करना आसान हो जाएगा. So developer experience, so JSX provides more intuitive and familiar syntax for developers who are already comfortable with HTML. तो जो HTML से comfortable है उनके लिए JSX क्या लगेगा, easy लगेगा, just like HTML. But ये मैंने आपको बता दिया. So we need a compiler, Babel, to process the JSX here. And इसको हमने थोड़ा देख लिया है, so थोड़ा सा आगे जाते हैं. Now let us use the React with installation. Now for all demos of the React, so we are going to use a VS Code editor. At the first step, we need to download and install Visual Studio Code Editor. So I had already did that. If you want to do it, go to the Chrome and search for Visual Studio Code. And here from, you can download it, Visual Studio Code, download for Windows, and just say next, 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 finish. Its installation is going to happen. Fine. So I had already installed, so it's getting downloaded here. I had already installed, so I will not install it again. Okay, no problem. We can install. Let me close the previous open. Let me close the tent also. Now I'll say, okay, so accept terms and agreement next. And if you want to create icon on the desktop, you can check this. Now you don't need to check anything other things. So already two things are checked here. So just say install, it will be getting installed. Now beside this, so what you need Node.js. So you need to install the Node.js. Right. So beside this, beside Visual Studio Code, you need a Node.js. Now to install the Node.js, we'll go to Chrome again and we'll search for nodejs.org. We'll go to the nodejs.org and here we'll say get Node.js and we can download it, Windows installer. And we'll install it using next, finish. So next, accept terms, conditions, next, install. So we need Node.js version greater than equal to 16. So how to check whether the Node.js is installed or not? You can do that using node-v command. So it's installing. So to check the Node.js installed or not, go to the command prompt or developer command prompt, any command prompt, and type node-v. If Node.js is installed, so it will show you the version. If it is not installed, it will give you error. So we need a version greater than equal to 16. So it's better to have the latest version. So it's installing the Node.js version here. Till then, we'll go further. So beside this, we need the Visual Studio Code. Now, once the Visual Studio Code is installed, open the Visual Studio Code here. And in Visual Studio Code, we'll install one extension. Here is your Visual Studio Code. Launch the Visual Studio Code. So once you install the Visual Studio Code, you'll find these buttons here, so Explorer, Search. Here we have the menu where from you can create the files, open the folder, close the folder, edit, view. In Visual Studio Code, we need one extension called prettier. Prettier will just use to format your code. So this extension will format the code. It will colorize your code and format the code when you save it. Now to install any extension in a Visual Studio Code. So what we'll do, I'll close this folder. We'll go to the settings and we'll go to the extensions. Here you'll find the settings button. Now once you click on the settings button, go to extensions and search for prettier extension. So you'll get the prettier code formatter. Click on this and you'll find the install button. Click on the install. So it will be get installed here. So it will get installed here. Fine. I had already installed, so it's showing me an install button here. Now this extension will allow you to format the code. So go to the settings of this extension. You will find the manage button. Now when you click on this manage button, you'll go to the settings. And in the settings, you'll find many settings here. So out of that, bracket same inline, whatever settings you are compatible with, you can tick them. Bracket spacing. Now end of line, whatever you want to set, you can set it. There are many settings. So close wrap, if you want to set that. Now, so I want a setting. To search for the save. So enable this setting. So format on save. So whenever you save, it will automatically format the JSX syntax. That will help you a lot. So format on save. Just tick this particular setting. Now your Visual Studio Code is ready. Now the next thing that we need to create a React application. So there are many ways by which we can create the React application. So many ways. Out of that, so we are going to use Vite. So we are going to use the Vite to create new React application. So to create the React application, we'll use the Vite. So what is Vite? So Vite is a modern front-end build tool that aims to provide a faster and more streamlined development experience for web projects. So Vite is a modern front-end build tool. So Vite is a build tool that aims to provide a faster and more streamlined development experience for web projects. Now, a Vite will make your life a little lazy. It provides you lightning fast web server. It also provides you various tools using you can build your React application, and with HRM module is very fast as compared to other we can say technologies with them. Now to create the React application using Vite, so we'll use npm create a Vite at that latest command. Right? Or you can specify the Vite version. So we had installed the Node.js. So why we need Node.js? So we need a Node.js for npm. So npm is called Node Package Manager. So npm is a package manager which will help you to install client-side packages, JS packages. So in .NET we have the NuGet. So NuGet will help you to install the .NET packages from NuGet repository. Similar way, so npm, so Node has a JS package repository. So where from you can install the Node packages inside the React application. So for that, we need an npm, and npm is not a separate installable software. It comes with a Node.js. So we need to install the Node.js. And Node.js makes npm available, and using npm, we can install the Node packages or JS packages, we can say. Besides this, Node.js also provide you a web server, so where we can host the application and run the application. But for React applications, so we are not going to. It provides you a lightweight web server, but we are not going to use this web server in React. Instead of that, we are going to use a Vite web server. So it provides you very fast and lightning speed web server. Now to create a new application using a Vite, we need to say npm node package manager, then create, and then Vite at the latest. So let's try this. So for okay, let me create a folder here. So I'll say a weekend. So in this folder, so I want to create the React project or React application here. So to open the command prompt, let me finish the Node.js installation. Now to open the command prompt in this folder, so what we'll do, so we'll just type the command in search box. So it will open the command prompt into this folder. We can last. Now let's create new React project here. So npm create Vite at the latest. So if Vite is not installed in your computer machine, so it will first install the Vite, and then it will create new project of that. So I'll just press the enter key. So for all this, you need to be connected to internet. It's saying update the Vite or use the whatever the version installed. So I'll just say yes, do it. Okay. Then it's asking you the project name. So put the project name, suppose post app. Now I'll press the enter key. Then using Vite, you can create various types of applications. So Vite is a build tool. It's a third-party tool, and using this tool, you can create various different types of applications. You can create a vanilla JavaScript project if you want to use a plain JavaScript. If you want to use Vue, so you can select the Vue option. If you want to create React, so we'll select the React here. So we have the P-React, we have the Lit, so Svelte, Solid, Quick, Angular, Marco. So if you want to use any other framework, so you can use it. So right now, we are creating the React application. So we'll select the React. Now, once you select the React, so you can create the React application with various options. So if you know the TypeScript, so you can use the TypeScript to create the React application. That's the new option available from React 17 point some version. So 17 onward, we can say. So React also support TypeScript. So we are going to use plain JavaScript to create the React application. So we are going to use plain JavaScript to create a React application. Okay. So we'll see the TypeScript demo, one or two demos at the end. So we are going to use the plain JavaScript. So you can use the TypeScript with React compiler if you want to use that. TypeScript with HWC. What is this that we'll see? So JavaScript, plain JavaScript. This is the option that we are going to use. You can use the JavaScript React compiler, JavaScript with HWC, router 7. So tank stack router. So if you want to use the tank stack router, so we have other options also. Right now, I'm selecting a JavaScript, plain JavaScript. So we'll create the React application using plain JavaScript. Now it's asking you, you wrote down with experimental. So we'll just say no. So what is this that we'll see later? Right now, we are not in position to learn it. So just say no. So install with npm and start now. Just say yes. So if you say yes, it will install all necessary JavaScript packages required to create your React application, as well as it will compile your React application, it will host your React application, and it will run. If you say no, then it will just create an empty React application. Then you need to install the packages using npm, and then you need to start your React application on its your own. So right now I'm just saying yes. Later on we'll say no. Now it will create the React application. It will take some time. So till then we'll go through the PPT. So change the folder. So these steps you need if you say no in the last option. So once you say no, so it will create empty React application. You go to that folder, then npm install the packages manually, then run your application. So we had said the S, so it will do everything for you. Now, the next thing that we have is what is Vite? So Vite is a modern front-end build tool that aims to provide faster and more streamlined development experience for web projects. So what are the key features of the Vite? So lightning fast server startup. So Vite leverages the native ES modules in the modern browser to serve code on demand, significantly reducing initial load times. So Vite server is very fast. It's lightning speed, we can say server. As soon as you save the changes in React, it will be reflected in the web browser. Now, initial load will be again small. Why? Because it serves the code on demand. So when code is required, it will load it in a browser using native ES modules feature. So which will significantly reduce the initial load time. Now, instant server start. So which dev server starts almost instantly. So regardless of React size, providing a seamless development workflow. So if you look at to a Node web server, so Node also has a light speed, light web server, but the Vite web server is very fast, instant start. So whatever the size of your project, doesn't matter. So web server will be instantly start with that. So you don't need to wait. Now, hot module replacement HRM. So it also has incredibly fast HRM, which allow you to see the changes reflect in the browser almost instantly, enhancing the development experience. As you make the changes and hit the save, so HRM module will reflect those changes into a browser using HRM module. So these are, we can say, few things. Now, if you go for, we can say deployment. So if you create the build, the optimized production build, so it also uses, we can say, a roll up under the hood for the production builds, ensuring your code is optimized for performance and size. So it will reduce the size of your code tremendously, and as well as it will roll up unused code to optimize your, we can say, build for performance. Now, framework agnostic. So this is again one of the feature that's why which is popular. So I'll often associated with the Vue.js, its creator. So Vue can be used with Vite can be used with various frameworks like React, Servlet, and even more vanilla JavaScript or Angular. So you can use with the Vue. So any other frameworks also. So framework agnostic. Now, so let's go to folder structure. So it had installed everything. It had set up, configured everything, and it had compiled your application and hosted your application at this URL. If you just copy this URL and if you go to the Chrome and if you hit this URL, you'll find this application running here. So this is your first React application. Fine. Now let's go through the project structure. So to stop this web server, I'll just say Control C, Control C. So it'll ask you to terminate the job. As now, right now we are in a weekend last folder. We have, you'll find here a first app folder. So first app. We'll change to the first app folder and we'll open this first app folder in a Visual Studio Code. So cd space first app will change the first app folder. Then we'll say code space dart will open this particular first app folder in a Visual Studio Code. So it'll open this React project in a Visual Studio Code here. Okay. So if you look at to this Explorer window, you'll find some folders in the files. Let's go through those folders and files. This is just a welcome screen. I'll just close this welcome screen. So at the first tab, so you'll find the first tab open here. And the first folder is node modules. Node modules folder contains all the, we can say, JS packages. So node packages required for your React application. So all node packages are available in this particular folder. Public folder will have the global image files or icon files that you want to use globally, that you want to use in HTML directly. So that you want to use in HTML directly, where your React application will be loaded. Then you'll find the SRC folder here. In the SRC folder, you'll find the asset folder and other files here. Now, asset folder will contain again image files or animation files that belongs to React application. That belongs to React application. These are the public files. In the public folder, you'll find the public file that will be directly loaded in a HTML without React. And in asset, we can put all the GIF, JPGs, static files, we can say that is the part of your React application. And this SRC folder contains the actual source code of your React application. So the first thing is asset. Second thing, you'll find app.cs, app.jsx, index.cs, main.jsx file. What is the use of this that we'll see? Then git ignore. So git ignore is a file that will allow you to list those, we can say, folders in the file that you want to ignore while putting this particular project inside the GitHub. Fine. Now, ESLint is, we can say, language configuration for ES. Now, index.html file, the actual file that will be get loaded in a web browser when you make a request to the React application. So index.html file is the actual file that will be get loaded in a web browser when you make a request to a React application. Now I'll come back to this particular file. Package-log.json file will help you to list all the packages or third-party libraries actual libraries used by your React application with actual versions. And package.json will contain all the libraries and with the package is just a list of libraries. This is just list of libraries installed inside your React application. This is just a list of libraries installed in your React application where package-log.json will contain a list of libraries that is actually used by your React application. This is installed and this is actually in use. readme.md file is required by, we can say, GitHub to have some, we can say, information, text information. The wit.config file contains the wit configuration. Now I'll come back to the index.html. So whenever you make a request to a React application at the first step, so index.html file is the only file that will get loaded directly in the web browser. And your entire React application works in the index.html. The index.html file is the only file that will get loaded in a React application. In a web browser, when you make a request to the React application, this is the only file that will be get loaded in the browser directly. And in this file, your React application will run. So this will act as a host for your React application. So where the React application will be loaded and executed. That's why we call it in SPA, single page application. So only one page will be get loaded in browser index.html and your entire React application runs into that page. So that's why we call it in SPA, single page application. Now, if you look at to this HTML file, so it has this read.svg file here as icon file. So whatever you want to use in index.html file directly, images, icons, you need to list those images and icon in a public folder. This public folder is accessible to the index.html file. And if you want to use any icon or image inside your React application, so put it into the asset folder under the SRC folder. The SRC folder contains your actual React application. Now, so here we have the read.svg. This is title and initial meta tag. If you look at to the body of this HTML, it has a div tag with ID root. It has a div tag with the ID root. Fine. It has a div tag with the ID root. So this is the actual tag in a DOM where React application will be loaded and executed. This will act as a root element for the React application where React components or UIs will be rendered. So how it is rendered? So we are with this tag, we are loading a module. So we are loading one module from main.jsx. So we had a word about module in last session. So script type equal to module src slash main.jsx. So we are loading the main module from the main.jsx. So if you go to the main.jsx, so you'll find the create root method that we learned just before. So create a root is the modern API which will help you to create a root tag where you can render the React application or React components. So what is happening in the main.js? So when you load the index.js, it will call the main.js, JSX. So in the main.jsx, so all we can say JSX files will have the extension JSX. If you are using the TypeScript instead of JavaScript, they will have the TSX extension. We'll see that at the end. So if you look at the create root, in the create root method, so first thing that we are doing, so we are finding the element from the HTML or DOM whose ID is root. So what this line will do, so it will go to the index.html file, it will go to the DOM, and from the DOM it will find the tag whose ID is root. And in our case, it is div loaded in an HTML, index.html file. And it will, this create root will make it as a root element. So create root method of the React will make it element, root element. And then we call the render method. In the render method, we can pass the React components that you want to render inside this root element. So in render method, we can pass the React UI that you want to render in this particular root element. Now this create root method is available in the library. So React -dom slash client. So you need to import the create root from this particular library using import. And for this, we can say for render and other things, we need a React mode. So stick mode. So what is stick mode? That we'll see later. So for stick mode, so we are importing the stick mode from React. So right now you think stick mode as in one root tag. And in that we are rendering the React app. You don't need stick mode. Stick mode is optional part of your React application. If you don't want, you can remove that. But for this demo, I'll keep this here. So this is the actual React component or UI with a name app rendered inside this root element. And this React component, or we can say React UI, is rendered from app.jsx file. So here from, it will go to the app.jsx file to load the app component. So app is a component and it's loading the app component from app.jsx file. And here is index.css. This is the global CSS that will be applied to all the entire HTML file. So entire application. So it will go to the app.jsx for app component. So if you look at to the app.jsx file, so here you'll find a function with the name app. It has many things, so we'll not worry about those things right now. So it has many things and it has a written method where it's rendering some JSX. So this JSX is rendered as we can say UI for the app component. So this JSX will be rendered as the UI for this particular app component of that. And this app component also using its own CSS file, app.css, and it's using one logo from asset folder. Here this is the global logo from public folder, and this is the React logo from asset folder. And it's using useState React hook. So useState is a hook for the React. We'll see that later. So right now, just remember, right now you focus here that this is the UI that is get rendered where in the root element of the, you can say React application. So it's loading this. If you want to just experiment with this, let us experiment. If I delete this div and if I just put the h1 tag, so welcome to React application. So as soon as you save this, it should reflect it in the web browser, but it will not since your application is not running. Now to start the application, we'll say npm run dev. So npm run day will run your application. So it will host your application and it will run your application. So now if you refresh yourself, it will get automatically refreshed. So welcome to React application. So this UI is getting loaded where in a tag. If you inspect it, let me check, can I access this? Here in the due tag with the ID root. Right. Now this is the folder structure of the React application, and this way we can create the React application and we can run the React application. So we can run the React application. Now let's have a look at to the component. So what is the component? The components in a React. So React के अंदर components क्या है उसको हम देखते हैं. So components in a React. So in React, components are the fundamental building blocks of your user interface. So components basically क्या है? So components are the fundamental building blocks of your user interface होता है. So in React, whenever you create a component, so it's the fundamental building block of your user interface. They are a reusable piece of code that encapsulates specific UI elements and their behavior. The component is made up of user interface, presentation, and logic or behavior होता है. Fine. Now think of them as a modular units that make your code more organized, easier to maintain, and more efficient. तो इसको आप समझ सकते हैं कि क्या है. तो मॉड्यूलर यूनिट्स है, उससे आपका कोड जो है अच्छे से ऑर्गेनाइज कर सकता है, उसको मेंटेन करना भी क्या हो जाता है, आसान हो जाता है. तो React support two types of components. One is functional component, another is class component. So let's create a functional component. So functional component is just a function. So JavaScript function. So in case of React, the JavaScript function will act as a functional component. So if you create any JavaScript function, so it will act as a function component. Now you just need to create a function with a function name, or you can also use arrow function if you want. And that function should return some JSX. It should return some JSX. This H1 tag is not the HTML. This is the JSX syntax. The HTML tag inside the JavaScript. So JSX syntax here. So function component, nothing but the JavaScript function. It is created using name function or arrow function or function as the expression, and it should return some JSX. So it should return some JSX of that. And you need to export this, we can say component using export default, or you can use the named export, whatever you feel comfortable. The named export will help you to export multiple things from one file. And if you use the export default, you can export only one thing at a time. And now let's create a functional component. So functional component create करता है. तो एक component बनाएंगे. So how we can create the component here? So in SRC folder, so I'll add one folder for components. तो components के लिए एक folder add कर देंगे यहाँ पर. Now components folder के अंदर will add one file, something called say hello.jsx. एक say hello नाम का component create करते हैं. तो say hello component create करने के लिए तो यहाँ पर मैंने इस फोल्डर को सिलेक्ट किया, इस बटन पर क्लिक किया, न्यू फाइल बटन से यहाँ पर आ गया say hello.jsx टाइप किया. तो say hello.jsx यहाँ पर ओपन हो गया. So function component is nothing but the function. So function say hello, and it should render some JSX. So it's written. So say H2. So welcome to say hello. Now, so I need to export it using export default say hello. You can export it at the end, or you can directly write here export default. If you want, you can write the export default here. So for this demo, so write it at the bottom of the, we can say file. So export default say hello. Now I want to use this component. I want to load this component in your root element. So root element directly. So I want to load this say hello in a root element. So what I'll do is I'll go to the main.jsx. In the main.jsx, here is a root element where I want to render the say hello component. So the first thing that I'll do is import say hello. Import say hello here from dot slash components, that is the name of folder, and say hello.jsx, that is the name of file. Now instead of app component, you can render multiple component here, no problem. But for time being, I'm just removing this app component, and here I'll render the say hello component using say hello tag. So whenever you render the component inside the JSX, so you need to use it as a HTML tag. So this is again a JSX. So you need to use this as an HTML tag. And whenever you use it in the JavaScript, you need to use it as a function. So we'll just say hello, then we'll say save. Now, if we go to the browser, so you'll find, so welcome to say hello component here. Now, this way we can create a function component. So very simple, straightforward, create a function which renders some JSX, which returns some JSX and export it using export default, or you can use the named export, no problem at all. And then you can use it wherever you want to use it, just import it and then use it. Now, similar to function component, we'll use the class component. So for class component is a little bit complex. So class component, the first thing that you need to, in class component, you need to create your class and inherit your class from a built-in class called the component. So at the first step, you need to import the built-in class component from the React library. Then you need to create your own class, and you need to inherit your class from a built-in class called component. Then you need to put one render method here. No need of constructor. So constructor देने की जरूरत नहीं. Constructor देंगे तो super keyword लगेगा आपको. So just do not use the constructor. Directly put the render method. So this component class should have a render method, and this render method should return some JSX. The component class should have a render method, and this render method should return some JSX. And this render method should return the JSX here. Now let's create a class component. So class component बनाने की कोशिश करते हैं. So in the components folder, so I'll add one more file. So I'll select the component folder, click on this particular button, new file, and then we'll say something called so by say .jsx. So we'll put the extension of the file .jsx here, and here we'll say something called so import components. So first thing that we'll do is we'll import the built-in component from React library. We'll create a class. Now in this class, we'll put some name to this class, say by, and we'll extend it from, we can say built-in component here. So we're just creating the tag for this. And in this class, we'll create a render method. And the render method, or render function, so return the JSX here. So it's a return, we'll say h1 say by. So say by called here. So say by called. Fine. Now the next thing that we need to export this also. So इसको भी export करना पड़ेगा. So you can use the export default or named export. So this export default, it's always a preferred approach to export anything using export default, say by. Now I'll import this say by component in main.jsx if you want to import it. So I'll say import here. Or you can import into the app that we'll see in next session. So I'll say by. And we can also render the say by below say hello. So also say by here. Now if you go to the browser, so you'll find the say by card. You'll find the say by card here. So for the class component, create a class, inherit your class from the built-in class for the component, put a render method, and from this render method, you can return some JSX and export it using export default, then import it in any file, and then you'll get the output here. ठीक है, वेलकम टू से हेलो कंपोनेंट, say by code. Now this way you can create a class component and the function component here. Now what is the difference here? So advantages of each other. The advantages of function component: simpler syntax, more concise and easier to read. Now hooks support, so access to React hook system. So all function components support the hooks. So you can use all the hooks, use state, use effect, use ref. So hooks are available in a function component. Better performance, generally lighter and faster than class component. So the performance is more better as compared to class component. Easier testing. So testing is very easier as it's a pure functions. Typically simpler to test. Current React paradigm. So most popular approach. So maximum companies prefer to use the function components to develop the React application instead of the class component. So aligned with the React's future direction, और हम भी function components को prefer करने वाले throughout all the demos. Now क्लास कंपोनेंट में भी कुछ एडवांटेजेस है. सो लाइफ साइकिल मेथड, बिल्ट इन मेथड से कंपोनेंट के लिए. सो कंपोनेंट डिड माउंट, कंपोनेंट डिड अपडेट, सो कंपोनेंट डिड अनलोड. सो इस तरह की मेथड से, बिल्ट इन मेथड से लाइफ साइकिल मेथड्स अवेलेबल है. यू डोंट नीड द हुक्स, तो उसकी आपको जरूरत पड़ेगी नहीं. नाउ स्टेट मैनेजमेंट बिल्ट इन है क्लास कंपोनेंट के अंदर. सो दिस डॉट ट्रेडिशनल स्टेट मैनेजमेंट अप्रोच. तो यहाँ पर भी आपको स्टेट मैनेजमेंट के लिए हुक्स की जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी. Now, legacy compatibility, so works with older code bases and patterns. तो पुरानी जो प्रोजेक्ट्स है उसमें क्लास कंपोनेंट्स अवेलेबल हैं, तो पुरानी कोड के साथ compatible रहेगा. बिकॉज ओल्डर जो प्रोजेक्ट्स आप देखोगे रिएक्ट में, वो मैक्सिमम क्लास कंपोनेंट में मिलेंगे. एकदम ओल्ड बट फ्रॉम लास्ट फ्यू ईयर्स मैक्सिमम कंपनी जो फंक्शन कंपोनेंट्स को यूज कर रही है. एरर बाउंड्रीज एक इंटरेस्टिंग फीचर है जो क्लास कंपोनेंट के साथ अवेलेबल है. ओनली अवेलेबल इन क्लास कंपोनेंट एज अ रिएक्ट 18. तो रिएक्ट 18 में ये इंट्रोड्यूस किया है एरर बाउंड्रीज. ये क्या हम देखेंगे. तो ओनली अवेलेबल इन अ क्लास कंपोनेंट, ये फंक्शन कंपोनेंट के अंदर नहीं है और रिएक्ट 18 का फीचर है. फाइन. तो इनडायरेक्टली हम बोल सकते हैं कि इस तरह के आप कंपोनेंट बिल्ड करके आपका रिएक्ट यूआई बना सकते हैं. तो होम पेज के लिए कंपोनेंट बना दिया, फिर हेडर के लिए कंपोनेंट, आर्टिकल के लिए कंपोनेंट, फुटर के लिए कंपोनेंट. हेडर को और आर्टिकल फुटर को होम पेज के अंदर आपने नेस्ट कर दिया. फिर लोगों को, टाइटल को, नावार को नेस्ट कर दिया हेडर में, नावार में लिंक 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 को नेस्ट कर दिया. तो इस तरह कंपोनेंट्स को क्रिएट करके, स्मॉल स्मॉल कंपोनेंट्स को क्रिएट करके, एक दूसरे में नेस्ट करके, क्लब करके आप क्या कर सकते हैं, यू कैन क्रिएट द रिएक्ट यूआई. तो रिएक्ट का जो यूआई है वो क्या कर सकते हैं, ला सकता है. तो कंपोनेंट का आप नेक्स्ट भी कर सकते हैं, कंपोनेंट को आप दूसरे कंपोनेंट में भी यूज कर सकते हैं. फाइन. नाउ सो फॉर एग्जांपल इंस्टेड ऑफ यूजिंग दिस से हेलो और से बाय हियर, तो यहाँ से अगर इसको मैंने हटा दिया, इफ आई वांट टू यूज दिस इन ऐप कंपोनेंट, और यहाँ पर मैंने ऐप कंपोनेंट को पुट कर दिया. सो ऐप स्लैश, तो यहाँ पर ऐप कंपोनेंट के अंदर इसको यूज करना है. तो आई विल गो टू द ऐप डॉट जेएसएक्स और यहाँ पर उसको इंपोर्ट करके हम यूज कर सकते हैं. तो इसकी मुझे जरूरत नहीं फिलहाल, तो मैं इसको हटा रहा हूँ और ये भी हटा देंगे. तो डायरेक्टली इंपोर्ट स्टेटमेंट ऐड हो जाता है अगर आप कंपोनेंट को टाइप करोगे. और सेव आई मैंने यहाँ पर टाइप करके एंटर प्रेस कर दिया, तो इंपोर्ट स्टेटमेंट ऑटोमेटिकली आता है. आप चाहे तो उसको मैन्युअली लिख सकते हैं. और यहाँ पे मैंने बोल दिया से हेलो. तो से हेलो में शायद मैंने स्पेलिंग मिस्टेक की है लग रहा है. नहीं, ठीक है. तो यहाँ पर दोनों को हमने ऐप में नेस्ट कर दिया. तो यू कैन नेस्ट द कंपोनेंट इनसाइड वन अनदर. तो एक दूसरे के अंदर उसको नेस्ट करके आप क्या कर सकते हैं, रिएक्ट यूआई बना सकते हैं. वेलकम टू रिएक्ट एप्लीकेशन से बाय कॉल्ड वेलकम टू से हेलो कंपोनेंट. तो यू कैन नेस्ट द कंपोनेंट्स टू क्रिएट कंपोनेंट ट्री. सो कंपोनेंट ट्री बना सकते हैं विच विल हेल्प यू टू बिल्ड द यूआई. नाउ इट इज बेसिकली वर्चुअल डॉम. तो थोड़ा वर्चुअल डॉम के बारे में जानते हैं. यहाँ पर we already stated that the DOM is a tree-like representation of the HTML structure of a web page. Fine. So allowing the JavaScript to interact with the manipulate the HTML page elements होता है. तो DOM बेसिकली क्या है, ट्री ऑफ ऑब्जेक्ट क्रिएटेड इन वेब ब्राउजर मेमोरी. तो DOM जो है ऑब्जेक्ट की ट्री होती है जो वेब ब्राउजर मेमोरी के अंदर आप क्रिएट करता है. sorry, web browser खुद create करता है using this object tree. So what we can do, so we can access, so we can access the, so we can access the HTML tag using JavaScript code with that. Now, however, so directly manipulating the DOM can be computationally expensive. However, directly manipulating the DOM can be computationally expensive, especially for complex web applications. Now, this is where the virtual DOM comes into play. ठीक है, तो डायरेक्ट ब्राउजर के डॉम को मैनिपुलेट करना कंप्यूटेशनली क्या एक्सपेंसिव है, इसलिए रिएक्ट क्या करता है, खुद का एक डॉम बनाता है, उसको वर्चुअल डॉम बोलता है. Now the virtual DOM is lightweight in memory copy of the actual DOM. So actual DOM का एक in memory copy होता है, lightweight copy होता है. When changes occur in the React component state, React doesn't immediately update the real DOM. तो कैसे काम करता है, तो React की कंपोनेंट की स्टेट के अंदर कुछ भी चेंजेस होते हैं तो डायरेक्टली रियल डॉम के अंदर अपडेट नहीं होते. React first update it in the virtual DOM and then virtual DOM will be, we can say, updated in the browser DOM. So updating the virtual DOM is much faster and less expensive. वर्चुअल डॉम को अपडेट करना ज्यादा फास्ट है और ज्यादा, सॉरी, इजी है और लेस एक्सपेंसिव है. ना ये काम कैसे करता है, सो React then compares the new virtual DOM with the previous one to identify the minimal set of changes required. Only those necessary changes are applied to the actual DOM, resulting in significant performance improvement of that. So आज रिएक्ट चेंजेस, सो रिएक्ट की जो चेंजेस है कहाँ पर होंगे, वर्चुअल डॉम के अंदर. और फिर वर्चुअल डॉम क्या करता है, उसमें से जितने नेसेसरी चेंजेस है जो एक्चुअल डॉम के लिए रिक्वायर्ड है उतनी चेंजेस को क्या करता है, सो एक्चुअल डॉम के अंदर अपडेट करता है. दैट विल हेल्प यू टू इम्प्रूव द परफॉर्मेंस ऑफ दैट. ना इसको स्टेप बाय स्टेप अंडरस्टैंड करने की कोशिश करते हैं. तो इनिशियल रेंडर, तो जब भी आप रिएक्ट एप्लीकेशन को रिक्वेस्ट भेजते हैं तो सबसे पहला स्टेप आएगा इनिशियल रेंडर. When React component is first rendered, React creates a virtual DOM representation of the component JSX. Now this virtual DOM is then used to create the actual DOM. तो रिएक्ट कंपोनेंट जब फर्स्ट टाइम आप रिएक्ट एप्लीकेशन को रिक्वेस्ट भेजोगे तो इनिशियल रेंडर होगा, तो कंपोनेंट आपका रेंडर हो जाएगा. एंड रिएक्ट क्रिएट्स अ वर्चुअल डॉम रिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ द कंपोनेंट JSX एंड दिस वर्चुअल डॉम इज देन यूज्ड टू क्रिएट द एक्चुअल डॉम. तो इनिशियल वर्जन बन जाएगा, वर्चुअल डॉम बन गया तो उसको यूज करके एक्चुअल डॉम बना दिया. ना व्हेन एनी स्टेट और प्रॉप चेंजेस, मतलब कंपोनेंट के अंदर कुछ चेंजेस हो रहे हैं, स्टेट प्रॉप्स क्या है हम देखेंगे आगे. तो कंपोनेंट्स के अंदर कुछ चेंजेस हो रहे हैं उसकी स्टेट के अंदर, उसकी प्रॉपर्टीज के अंदर, देन रिएक्ट रीरेंडर द कंपोनेंट्स क्रिएटिंग न्यू वर्चुअल डॉम. तो रिएक्ट क्या करता है, कंपोनेंट को रीरेंडर करता है क्रिएटिंग अ न्यू वर्चुअल डॉम फॉर दैट पर्टिकुलर चेंजेस. उस चेंजेस के साथ एक नया वर्चुअल डॉम बन जाता है, मतलब आपके पास पुराना एक वर्चुअल डॉम है और एक नया वर्चुअल डॉम बन गया जिसमें चेंजेस है. देन इट विल यूज द डिफिंग एल्गोरिथम. तो दो वर्चुअल डॉम बन गए, एक पुराना इनिशियल वाला और एक चेंज वाला. उसके बाद क्या होगा, एक डिफिंग एल्गोरिथम यूज किया जाएगा. तो डिफिंग एल्गोरिथम में क्या होगा, रिएक्ट कंपेयर द न्यू वर्चुअल डॉम विद द प्रीवियस वन यूजिंग डिफिंग एल्गोरिथम. तो डिफिंग स्टेप में क्या होगा कि पुराना जो डॉम आपके पास वर्चुअल डॉम है उसके साथ नए वर्चुअल डॉम को कंपेयर किया जाएगा टू फाइंड आउट द डिफरेंसेस. डिफरेंसेस क्या है. So this algorithm efficiently identifies the differences between the two trees. इन दोनों trees के differences को find करेगा and जो differences है उसको एक minimal update में convert कर देगा. So minimal updates and only those necessary changes are applied to actual DOM. So वो जो necessary changes है actual DOM के अंदर क्या हो जाएंगे, apply हो जाएंगे. This minimize the number of expensive DOM manipulations. ठीक है, तो डिपिंग एल्गोरिथम से पुराना वर्चुअल डॉम और नया वर्चुअल डॉम इसके डिफरेंसेस को ढूंढा जाएगा और एक इनिशियल अपडेट बनाया, सॉरी मिनिमल अपडेट बनाया जाएगा. उस ऑब्जेक्ट के थ्रू एक्चुअल डॉम को क्या किया जाएगा, अपडेट किया जाएगा, विच रिड्यूस द, वी कैन से, मिनिमाइज द नंबर ऑफ एक्सपेंसिव डॉम मैनिपुलेशंस. तो दिस वे वर्चुअल डॉम जो है काम करता है रिएक्ट के अंदर. हाँ, तो मेरे ख्याल से आज यही छोड़ेंगे इसको. काफी चीजें देखी हमने, तो नेक्स्ट सेशन कल हम इसको कंटिन्यू करेंगे, कल और चीजें इसमें ऐड करेंगे. और ये जो है आपको मैं शेयर कर देता हूँ, तो इसमें कोई डाउट या क्वेरी है तो फटाफट पूछ लेंगे.